You don't freeze in interviews because you're unprepared. You freeze because you're trying to remember answers instead of telling stories. And the second someone says, "Tell me about a time when," your brain starts flipping through everything you've ever done, trying to find the right answers. And of course, that's the exact moment that your mind goes blank and you can't think of anything. So you ramble, you freeze, and you walk out thinking, "I know I'm better than that." And yes, you are. So let's fix that today. Stop trying to remember answers and start organizing your stories. I use something called story buckets, and once you set this up, interviews feel a whole lot less chaotic because you already know what you're going to say before they even ask the question. Think of it like this. Right now, your interview answers are basically in a messy closet. Everything's in there, but good luck finding it when you need it. What we're doing is organizing that closet, so instead of digging around every time you get a question, you're just pulling the right thing off the shelf. Here's how it works. When you think about your career, you already have the stories. The problem is that you're trying to come up with them on the spot, and that's where people lose it. So instead, we organize them into 5 simple buckets: teamwork, technical skills, communication and collaboration, problem solving, and achievements. Then you pick 2 or 3 strong stories for each, and that's it. Once you do this, something clicks. You realize you can use the same story for a bunch of different questions. So instead of panicking, you're just choosing which version of your story to tell. Now, once you have your stories, this is where people mess it up a little, and I see this all the time. They either over explain everything or they skip the part that actually matters. So I use a simple structure called ATB, which stands for action, task, value. What was happening? What did you do? And what changed because of you? If you don't clearly show your value, your answers just fall flat. Let me show you what this looks like. I had a client in an interview. He barely spoke, avoided eye contact, and was giving short one-word answers. By all the traditional standards, he was bombing that interview, and you could feel it in the room. But what the interview panel didn't know was that he was on the autism spectrum, so he struggled with verbal Q&A, but he was incredibly skilled at welding and deeply knowledgeable about the field. Halfway through, I realized this format is not working. So I changed the approach and I asked him to show photos of his current welding work. Everything shifted. He lit up, he started walking everyone through his project, explaining his techniques, and connecting with the team. It was a completely different energy, and he got that job. Years later, his manager says he is one of the best hires they've ever made. Now, here's the part most people miss. That one story fits into multiple buckets. It's problem solving, communication, and adaptability, and it can answer completely different questions depending on how you position it. If they ask, "Tell me about a time things didn't go as planned," you focus on the pivot you made. If they ask, "What's one of your strengths?" you shift it and frame it around adaptability and creativity, showing how you recognized something wasn't working and adjusted your approach to get a better outcome. Same story, different angle. Let's make this real because this is where people start overthinking it. Let's say you have a problem solving story about improving a process. For example, in my previous role, we were seeing a drop in client engagement on one of our key programs. I reviewed feedback and realized clients were confused about the onboarding process, so I redesigned the materials to simplify the steps, and within 2 months, engagement increased by 30%. That's your base story. Clear and simple. Now, watch how it flexes depending on the question. If they ask, "Tell me about a time you solved a problem," you can say something like, "In my previous role, we were seeing a drop in client engagement on one of our key programs. I reviewed feedback and identified that confusion during onboarding was a major issue. So I redesigned the materials to simplify the process, and within 2 months, engagement increased by 30%. If they ask, "Tell me about a time you improved a process," you shift it slightly and say, "One example that comes to mind is when I identified confusion in our onboarding process that was causing early drop-offs. I streamlined the materials, simplified the steps, and made the experience more intuitive, which led to a 30% increase in engagement within 2 months." And if they ask, "Tell me about a time you took initiative," you frame it like this: I noticed a pattern in client confusion during onboarding that wasn't being addressed. So I took the initiative to review the experience and redesign it. By simplifying the process and clarifying key steps, we saw a 30% increase in engagement within 2 months. Same story, three different answers. That's why story buckets work. You're not memorizing answers, which, let's be honest, never works, and it's like information overload. You're preparing stories you can actually use, and once you do this, interviews stop feeling so unpredictable. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, I don't even know what my best stories are, or I wouldn't even know how to talk about my experience like that, I've got you. Check out my Get Seen guide. It's focused on your resume, but more importantly, it helps you figure out what your strongest experience actually is and how to position it clearly. Because these stories we just talked about, this is exactly where they come from. And if you want something you can use right away, grab my free job search toolkit. I'm linking it in the comments. This isn't just about answering interview questions. It's about knowing exactly what to say about your experience, no matter where you are in the process. All right, job search besties, if this helped, hit like and subscribe. And I'm going to keep being your career woman through every step of your job search. Now go get them. You've got this.